Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Neena R, who's a trademark attorney and author of Dear Future Lawyer, an intimate survival guide for the minority female law student. Neena, welcome to the program.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me here.
Hey, you're welcome. So I'm excited to talk about this book because, when you hear in business and marketing, speak to a very specific subset of your audience. You get rich in the niche or, really focus. Your book is very focused, and I think that's so smart of you to do. Dear Future Lawyer, a survival guide. So yes, I want to survive for the minority female law student. So I'm excited to hear about this book. Give us a little bit of background on yourself, what led you to law school, and then at what point did you think, I need to write a book about this?
Thanks, Mike. So the very important thing is that when I was younger, I was like a different kid. I always tell people I was like pitching service projects and things like that. My mom always yelled, you're going to be a CEO. My dad always knew that I was meant to be the boss. So I always knew that I was meant to do something. I didn't know until about 8th grade that I actually wanted to do law. And it wasn't just like law or law shows that got me into it. It was finding out that the school districting lines in my area was drawn a certain way so that people that were across the street from the middle school that I went to couldn't go to my school. And I knew just enough to know that my school was a good school and the other schools didn't have as much funding. And so at that time, I couldn't articulate it as a child. I was frustrated with a rule I could do nothing about. And I realized that those are things that are laws here in the States, here in the U.S., and I don't like laws or rules that don't make sense to me, and then put people in a situation where otherwise they would have had access to a well-funded education where they don't at this point because they lived on the wrong side of the line or the district line. As that developed into college, I was able to articulate why I was more angry about it, and it was the fact that, I wasn't able to see people have the same access that I was able to have. And I realized that access and people's preclusions by high school, I had done presentations and research papers on prisons for my English classes. And I couldn't convince my classmates that the prison system was so defunct, so messed up, so, imperfect that we probably needed to reform. Everything was stacked against a certain way. And so that pushed me. And I knew I wanted to go to law to be a criminal defense attorney. Funny enough, I'm not a criminal defense attorney only now. I do more than that. I do business and things like that, but I never knew that going to law school. I just knew I wanted to help somebody. Yeah. And then I ended up in law school. And this book, it was a letter to myself because, for me, self-care, therapy, journaling, all of that helps you get through law school. And I wrote a letter to myself trying to tell myself that it was going to be okay and that these things that I was experiencing was normal. And I had no idea that when I sent it to people, they were going to say, this is so good. You should really keep going. And so I just did one every year, and that became a book. And wow. So that was a phenomenal, powerful moment for me.
Well, it probably became therapeutic at that point where you're kind of writing your letter and going, oh, that felt good, and I need to put this in here. And so I think that's really interesting. But I want to back up to something you said at the very beginning, which I think is really powerful. And you kind of think about, are leaders born or made, or are successful people born or made? And, people can take one side of that debate or the other. But something you said is really curious. You noticed that some kids from across the street from the school couldn't go to that school just because of wherever the lines and the boundaries were. And you're like, that shouldn't be the case. But that's a law in the books. Many people, if not most people, might go, that's the way it is. Okay, so anyway, what's on TV? And you were wired to think, I don't like that but what can I do about it? And what if? And what are the possibilities if this were changed? And what would it take to change it? And could I be part of that change? I think that that's a really interesting character trait that maybe someone listening to this or reading through your book will pick up on that and go, my mom had told me that I should be an attorney, and I noticed the same kind of thing. I've noticed this about this issue or that issue. So I think that's a really big thing that maybe the question I would ask you is, do you find that way that you're wired is similar to other people that would tend to go to law school, and then that becomes a way that you look at issues so that you can see the possibilities?
I think it's a great question, and I think the best way to look at it is that, yes, I think that a lot of people are wired that way in that sense, but the people who are wired that way don't necessarily go to law school. One, because they believe, and, I falsely believe this too, that, they don't have any experienced people in their family. They're the first one in their family, so they're unlikely to have very much success. They don't have a quote-unquote legal mind, so they won't be successful at this craft just because they find issues. And most people in their families are, they kind of make them feel bad for noticing rules and finding technicalities. And sometimes if you're like that, if you look at things and you question it and you wonder how you can impact it for the better, sometimes people say you're naive and you believe too positive in the world. But I think that the reason why the profession sometimes suffers is because we have less people who are more positive and optimistic, and we have more people who are just saying, as you quoted, Mike, that's just how it is. And that is what's perpetuating the system of indifference. If you notice, if there's indifference in your system, you will have a very, very difficult time connecting with people and making that feeling. If people come to me in my business because I make them feel at home, and that's not something that we don't push that in the profession. I think that is a mistake.
I couldn't agree more. I think that indifference and apathy is such a big thing in so many areas of life, personal, professional, whatever you want to think about. And I think it's the people that, you might not think, well, I'm just not wired that way. Well, guess what? You don't have to be wired that way to make a difference. You just need to start going, maybe I need to notice this or that or the other going on around me, and then go, in what way could I make a small difference? It doesn't have to be massive difference, but just that, if you've heard of the butterfly effect, or you think about throwing a pebble into the pond and you notice these ripples that just go on and on and on. So what can you do in that small way? And then maybe that little step forward, whatever that looks like, maybe leads you to go, that was pretty easy, fun, and rewarding and fulfilling. I'm going to take that next step. So I think that's really a huge, huge piece that you bring up, kind of almost a foundational piece. So let's jump into the book. I love your 3 sections that you have: the plunge, the rat race, and the grind. Give us a little bit of maybe a 30,000-foot overview of what the plunge is focusing on.
So the plunge is basically how you're thrown into law school, and it feels like a plunge, right? The deep dive, that really scary dive that you take, the high dive at the pool, and you're really scared and you don't know what's going to happen, and so you just dive in, and it hurts like heck the whole time you come down. So it's not a surprise. You know it's going to hurt when you jump. But you just got to do it, right? You got to take that plunge, and you have to try. And sometimes people they get hurt, and it's very hard for them to get back up and try to do it again. Some people, they actually are very successful, right? They plunge into the water, and they just go swimming and deep diving, and they're like the Olympic swimmers out there. And then there are people like me that they plunge that one time, and then they're like, I'm ready to go again, but I'm scared. And that's how most people end up in law school. They plunge into this thinking that it's not okay to be scared. It's not okay to have a hard time. It's not okay to struggle. And a lot of people, they are told and preached that you got to be successful all the way through law school in order to find success later on in life. And I realized that the plunge is about making you feel like the only way to have value is to have high grades and high GPAs, high writing ability, everything. And I had to learn how to make that process a little bit more fun for my reader. So I decided to take all of the characters, because there are the gunners, the jokesters, the space cadets, all of those people that I mentioned in the book and more. But I mentioned those, and I wanted to make it fun. make it an interactive process. You're going to go through all of this stuff. That's normal, y'all. But these people, you're going to meet these people, and you're going to learn how to value people. And I don't think that a lot of law school allows us to do that. We just know how to call people or identify them. We don't value them. And I decided to take that approach and evaluate.
That's interesting that you say that, because I think if someone can think about, law school, I've heard so many things about that, so before I take the plunge, I don't know what, right? Big question mark. So maybe that section of your book is going to help someone to go, okay, I feel a little bit better about now seeing about what to expect in that first whatever it is, the first exposure to law school or the first year or semester. And then when you can kind of give some of these kind of checkpoints of what, hey, don't worry if this happens, that's normal. Don't you find that really makes people feel like, okay, cool. It's really hard and frustrating, but Neena said it was going to happen this way, so I can soldier on,
I like that. Yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, you get scared. Everyone scares you to death, everyone else here. And you don't have to get scared and stop going. A lot of people get scared and stop going, but you don't have to. You can keep going. You can keep pushing forward. And that's a very difficult process. And I think that if you realize that you can keep pushing forward, and all you had to know was that it was going to be hard, you wouldn't be scared anymore, because you know it's hard. And you know there are going to be people there that you're going to meet. They're going to make the whole experience worth it.
It reminds me of that acronym for fear. If you heard that before, FEAR, false expectations appearing real. And I think what a lot of, life coaches will tell you about fear, hey, once you kind of know it and face it and confront that fear, whatever that might be for you in your life, and in this case, maybe, the first year of law school, and you go, well, how bad could it be? And Neena told me this, that, and the other. So, maybe that fear is still fear, but it's got a little F. And it's not as daunting as it was before I had big question marks about everything, because it really was the unknown. So I think that's a really big check mark that someone can expect from the book, is just laying it out of what to expect in that, the plunge, taking the plunge, really should make them feel a lot more confident about that decision that they either are about to make or they just made.
That's very true. That is very true, Mike.
Hey, so once you get past the plunge, the second section of the book is the rat race, and I can only imagine that that's kind of like, okay, you found your, you got your syllabus, you got your class schedule, you're in, past phase one, but now let's roll up your sleeves and get down to business. So what's the rat race all about?
So the rat race is all about the preparation of certain materials. So when you get your applications to these jobs, just, 2 year they recruit you. That's like where everybody finds a job. That is where you also feel the high pressure of finding a job. So you need your resume intact. You need your writing sample intact, a cover letter. You need things that you never even understood how to form before in perfect, pristine care, because you're submitting job applications. Instead of finishing school, right, you're finishing applications for jobs that will decide where you're going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And that is a huge rat race. You spend all of 2 years just trying to build up your, basically your options once you finish. And it's a huge rat race. And most people, while they do it, they forget that they have to find their passion. So they just find a job. And that is a very destructive trait that I have seen in many law students, is that they don't actually find their occupational wellness passion. They find something that's related to, somebody else told me the federal judicial clerkship is very meaningful, but they don't actually know or ever have wanted those things. And that is why it's a rat race, because you're being told all these things that you should value because the school values them. But do you value them? Is that something to you or something that was told to you? That's
a really big revelation for me from the outside listening in. I'm not an attorney, never even had a desire to go to law school, but hearing you describe that, I'm thinking, okay, hold up. I'm supposed to be, working 24/7 with, the high level of workload and content and learning and all of the thing with law school. And now you're telling me I got to learn how to write a resume and a this and a that, and learning the to navigate this whole maze of getting a job. I'm trying to get my law school degree here. Hold up. And yet you're now revealing that this is part of the process. So don't be alarmed. And here's what you need to do. And here's some checklists and milestones, what to expect. But in reality, I think the biggest thing that you brought up there is don't feel forced. It's kind of like when you're in the ocean and that undertow kind of carries you and it's like, I can't do anything about it, but I'm just going with the flow. Well, don't do that, because now if you just get into that one position because your roommate or your friend or your whatever said, oh, that's a good, avenue to take. Yeah, but investigate it. Do a day in the life of, or do a ride along, or go spend, a couple hours with someone in that job and going, would I like that? And it really does get down to that passion, because you could talk to all kinds of employment or, counselors that go, if you don't love your job, it's like punching the clock. You get up and you wake up on Monday morning and you're like, oh, another week. You want to wake up, at, way earlier than your alarm was set for Monday and going, I get to go to work today doing my whatever that is. So finding your passion, I think, is such a big point you bring up.
Yes, and I got to wake up today and say I get to do a podcast today. That's how you should feel. You should be excited about the things you're going to do in life. And most people are not. They are excited because somebody else told them that it has value, and not that they believe in their heart that that's valuable.
100%. And can you give an estimate? If I were to ask you, or let me ask you, if you were advising someone right now, reading the book or listening to this podcast, hey, take a moment to discover and investigate your passion of where you want to go in the direction of your law school, after law school. Can you say, well, this exercise or this, discovery process, that should be 1 minute or 1 year? I mean, this is not an exercise of futility. We know it's important, but if you do it the right way and you really think it through, or investigate this, or ask someone, or go half a day with someone, how long should it take for someone to kind of clarify where their direction is based on their passion?
So I give them anywhere between the beginning of 1L year all the way into the end of 2L summer. Because right before that point, you're still deciding whether or not you want to stay in law school. Some people leave after 1L year. Some people leave after 2L year. So I give them until the end of 2L summer. And the reason why is because 3L is all about finishing. I mean, you've already gotten over the hurdle. So if you decide to stay to 3L, you actually have to get rid of all of these other things and focus, like hyper-focus on what it is you want to do. And no one really supports the things that you really say in your heart you want to do. No one really supports those things. No one really supported that I could start a firm right when I got out of law school and passed the bar. But that's what I did. So you have to hyper-focus. And I didn't know that I wanted to do those things until after I got out and couldn't find a job. And so those are the things that you have to realize. You have to hyper-focus. You have to say, you know what, even if I don't get a job, this is what my plan is. And so I wrote in a book, right, and I hid it away. It was in my criminal law book, and I wrote 5 directions that I could go. I could go get another degree. I could start my own firm. I could start my own business. I could do something in that direction, or I can go back to the work that I've been doing and try to work my way up through there. But I had 5 plans. And the 5th plan, the 5th one, so that means 1, 2, 3, 4 was shot. The 5th one is the one that ultimately ended up following. But I roadmapped that before I finished. And that's what you have to do. You have to roadmap it and then stick that in your head somewhere and go with that roadmap. You cannot listen to anyone else's roadmap for your life, even mine, okay? Even mine is imperfect. And you have to realize that you have the roadmap in you, but I wrote this book so you could find it, not so that you could just listen to this is the only way that's going to work. This is one way that works for me. Whatever works for you, I want you to discover that. That's what that last chapter is meant to pull out.
Perfect. Love it, love it, love it. So that leads us then to the final section of the book, which is the grind. What's the overview of that section?
So the grind is about finishing strong. A lot of people say 3 LOL, where you just kind of take 3 years as a joke. Don't, right? Because everybody else is already thinking that. So 3 years where I got published. I got my legal publications. I got published in a journal. Shortly after my 3L year, I got published in the Harvard Journal of African American Policy. So those are things that you can do your 3L year. Your 3L year has to be dedicated to bringing in every accolade that you've been holding back because you've been working your butt off, putting that 2L year work in to kind of get yourself a job, and then you've been putting that work in to make sure your grades were tight 1L year. So 3L year isn't about like taking slack. You can take classes, right, if you're truly interested in your 3L year that will really, help your GPA. But other than that, you really got to focus on picking up some accolades that you want, not the school, but that you want. So for me, publication was more important because I came to law school already published for my honors thesis in undergrad. So I wanted to be published before I left, and that's what I achieved. You have to decide what your big thing is that you want to accomplish before law school. Don't make it some grandiose thing that's not ascertainable right now. Make it something that's realistic that you can do before you leave. I wanted to win a scholarship before I left law school, and I was able to win one. Those are the things that you got to make your priority, because at the end of the day, if you don't get Order of the Cross or a valedictorian, you still have value, and you have to understand that by doing those things that will allow you to see that. Putting yourself in opportunities to win awards and things like that. Go to service projects. You want to get service awards. Whatever it is you want to achieve. I wanted to get Order of Samaritan. I wanted to get, top 3L for a service. Those are the things that I achieved. But I wanted those things from the first day. Those are the things that I wanted in my heart. So you have to decide if you're really going to dedicate whatever, class courses that you're supposed to do to making that happen, or if you're going to allow people to make you hyper-focused on those judicial clerkships and all those other things that you didn't necessarily want before you got there and take you off. Because those things, if you don't get them, you will be severely upset with yourself, and it will cause some true confidence issues. And I don't want you to believe that you're not deserving of the best legal, opportunities just because you didn't meet a certain mark or a certain federal judicial clerkship.
Yeah, so that goes to mindset. So and it goes to what to expect. So when you can lay that out and say, hey, here's some things to expect, and if this happens, don't feel like you're a failure because you have a wonderful opportunity to contribute value. Those are, just some things that you can be shooting toward, but to clarify those. So I really like that piece of advice there. Let's move to some of the final sections that you cover. Starting your own law firm and Trademark Thursdays, and then also some recommended businesses and resources for people for what maybe you will need moving past out of law school.
Awesome. So guys, in this new wave that I moved in after law school, I started a firm, and I started a firm out of pure necessity. And I learned how to start that firm using a book called How to Start a Law Firm for Dummies. I kid you not. I picked it up, I read it, I understood what it was telling me I needed to do, and then I applied what I needed to learn. And then I made the mentors and the connections that I needed to help me grow my practice. And that led me to finding someone who told me to just go ahead and put social media out there that helps people. And so I started Trademark that Thursdays in the middle of COVID. And that picked up my entire practice for trademarks, intellectual property in the industry, because I never knew that marketing was so simple in the sense that I just had to start putting out information, and most people do not tell you that. And lastly, I have been compiling, and I think that I was inspired by Kezia Williams for putting together something called the MyBlackReceipt.com, which is a black-owned business fund, basically, where people they spent money at these black-owned businesses in their website, and they keep data on that. And I was inspired by that and wanted to actually make a recommended list of my own. A lot of the businesses that I did seek out are black-owned, but some of them are business people that I have actually done the business formation work for, or I have worked with personally. So I wanted to develop a list to basically put all that information that entrepreneurs need, who to contact, who to email. I wanted to go ahead and put a list where the services were there, the name of the business was there, and the email was there, so that people can have access immediately to stuff that they want, and great people that I have worked with for years and years and years to be able to connect with. So that's something that I don't think that you see out there. Most people showing you the game plan by giving you the contact. And that's what we all need, right? We need the Rolodex of contacts so we can start building our brand.
And once they come through your book of guidance and putting your arm around them virtually, and say, you got this and you can do this and here's what to expect and don't feel bad if this happens, it's going to happen. Then when you get to these recommendations, it's like, wow, that trust has been developed. And now, I mean, these businesses that you're mentioning or these resources are so valuable. So I think that is such a huge benefit. So, let's wrap up with a final question, which is, what do you want to encourage people to do when they're reading the book? When's the best time to pick it up? If you're thinking of law school right now, is that the best time? Or if you've already enrolled, when's it too late? I mean, can you benefit? Year 1, year 2. I'm sure there's benefits for everyone. But touch on that, and then what's the best way someone can reach out to you, learn more about your practice, as well as pick up a copy of your book?
Awesome. So the best way to pick up, or best time to pick up that book, is right when you're questioning whether or not your journey was worth it. And that could be past, present, or future. So you can pick up that book at any point in time, because the concepts discussed in that book will help you understand that every single process has a very, very frustrating grading, all of that. All of the processes are similar. Even a med school student could pick up the book and find some similarities to what's going on. Now, we don't have board exams and things like that, but we do have huge, high-intensity, high-stakes pressure. So this book is for anyone who is struggling finding their identity and their journey, and needs a reminder that 1, is normal, 2, that it's going to be okay, and 3, that they are going to discover their passion. So this book is about people who want to discover their passion. You can discover that as early as I did in 8th grade, or you can discover that even earlier than that. I don't put a limit on this book. I've given this book to 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. I've donated this book to 7- and 8-year-olds. This book is so powerful for the fact that you need to understand what your journey is to get through it. If you understand the journey, you can move through it. The next thing that I can remember about this book is that you guys can find it on my website, literally, Neena R, Speer Law Firm.com. That'll be in anything that you find on the internet. If you just look up Neena R Speer or Neena Speer, you will find it on the internet. It's just Dear Future Lawyer. You can buy it on Amazon. You can go to dearfuturelawyer.com to get it directly from us. But I just hope that if you do decide to pick up this book or gift it, that you are actually in a place where you can say, hey, I think you just need some encouragement to find your passion. That's it, because that's what this book is for. It's for the female minority law student who wants to find their passion. Find it.
I think that's so awesome. That's really, really good. I love how you laid it out in the 3 sections, that kind of, with the virtual, put the arm around the student going, here's what's going to happen. Don't worry. So I love how you've laid this out. I love all your points you brought up. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book. I'll make sure that we've got the link to your website already set in the show notes, so people can click right on there and find out more about you and your book. So Neena, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.